Most of the time, we at TripleJump Towers are more than happy with video games that spin a simple tale of good versus evil, so show us a hero to root for and a villain to shout obscenities at, and you've got our attention. Just occasionally though, it pays to have your brain do some work, so a slightly more convoluted plot with a number of different threads is what we need. Complex lore, morally ambiguous characters, and the odd plot twist here and there are all things that can help make a great narrative. Some games, however, take things a little too far and make their stories so complex that even the most focused among us will struggle to keep up with what's happening. And even after scouring internet forums and watching hours of YouTube videos, we're still none the wiser. We're going to do our best to deconstruct as many of these plots as possible, so for safety, it's best to stick a spoiler warning right here. Not that you're going to understand what any of these spoilers mean. I hope you're paying attention, folks, because it's about to get complicated. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 video game plots that no one understands. Number 10. Beyond Two Souls. Having played Beyond Two Souls and conducted extensive research, we've come to the conclusion that not only are we confused,
oh my god, Carrie,
but that David Cage didn't have the foggiest what it was about either. It doesn't help that the game plays out non-chronologically, but even strung together in the right order, it's still quite the enigma. The game follows Jodie, a young woman that has supernatural powers which manifest through a mysterious entity called Aiden, making her able to possess people's minds and manipulate certain objects. After almost killing a load of neighborhood kids, Jodie is placed into the care of doctors Nathan Dawkins and Cole Freeman, who try and help her to control her powers. When Nathan's family dies tragically in a car accident though, he tries to build a condenser which will connect the world of the living with that of the dead. Years later, after the failure of the previous condenser, Nathan sets about building another which he intends to use to merge the worlds of the living and the dead, thus rendering death itself meaningless. Naturally, it's up to Jodie and Aiden to put an end to this madcap scheme, or at least we think that's what's going on, but honestly, we're really not sure. Number 9. The Legend of Zelda series. Do notice how we've gone for the whole series here as opposed to individual games, because largely the Zelda games are easy to understand. Ganon shows up with some maniacal plan, and it's up to Zelda and Link to stop him. Straightforward enough. The problem comes though when you attempt to tie them all together. For years, fans have speculated that all of the Legend of Zelda games are linked. No pun intended, but it wasn't until the release of the Hyrule Historia that this was confirmed. Basically, the timeline of the franchise hinges on Ocarina of Time and how it branches at the game's conclusion. According to Hyrule Historia, each game is either a prequel to Ocarina of Time, as is the case for Skyward Sword, the Minish Cap, and Four Swords, or it fits into one of 3 different timelines. One where the hero is defeated, and 2 where he succeeds, the child era and the adult era. Oh, except Breath of the Wild takes place after everything else in the series, and may or may not have a connection to any one of those timelines. Just try not to think too hard about the fact that Ocarina of Time only actually has one ending. I assure you, we haven't. I'm so confused. Number 8. The Mortal Kombat series. Buckle up, everyone, because it turns out that a franchise that focuses most of its energy on ensuring characters' innards become outards actually has a pretty intricate plot. The universe within Mortal Kombat consists of 18 different realms, each created by the Elder Gods. They decreed that the denizens of each realm could only conquer others if they were able to defeat the defending realm's greatest warriors in 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments. 500 years prior to the events of the first game, Shang Tsung, with the help of Goro, is able to seize control of the Mortal Kombat tournament. With Goro having won 9 consecutive tournaments, a new generation of warriors must challenge him. Throughout the next two sequels, Shao Kahn continues his attempts to invade Earthrealm, but on each occasion has his arse handed to him by Liu Kang, as does Shinnok in Mortal Kombat 4. When the series was rebooted in 2011, an element of time manipulation was brought in, which meant that Thunder God Raiden was able to prevent the events of Armageddon from happening, and further timeline-altering shenanigans were brought about by Kronika in Mortal Kombat 11. In conclusion, thanks to a whole bunch of wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff, all of the things I just spoke about may or may not have even happened. Frankly, I have absolutely no idea. Number 7. The Mega Man X series. On the surface of it, the Mega Man X series is reasonably simple to comprehend, or at least reading the plot synopsis online will lead you to believe that's the case. Prior to the events of the first game, Dr. Thomas Light created Mega Man X, but sensing danger in his creation, he seals it in a capsule for testing. This is uncovered at the beginning of the series' first title by Dr. Kane, who uses Mega Man X to create legions of robots known as Reploids with free will, who naturally turn on humanity at pretty much the first opportunity they get. War breaks out between humanity and the rogue Reploids, dubbed Mavericks, and led by the evil Sigma, they do their gosh darndest to destroy the human race at every turn. This all seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, the issue is that the games don't really tell players much about the lore. The information given about why the robots go Maverick is sketchy, various factions rise and fall throughout the series but we're never told why, and characters will often refer to incidents that we as players haven't been privy to. As the saying goes, the truth is out there, but trust us, you're never going to find it by just playing the games. Brilliant. Number 6. Death Stranding. Not to spoil things, but don't expect this to be the last time you see Hideo Kojima's work on this list, because oh boy, does that man love a convoluted plot. In short, Death Stranding is set in a post-apocalyptic version of the USA, where a cataclysmic event has caused invisible creatures hailing from a place somewhere between life and death to start roaming the Earth. If they come across a dead body, they'll consume it, which causes a big explosion and a kind of rainfall that rapidly deteriorates everything it comes into contact with. This means that most of the US is destroyed and people confine themselves to remote colonies. When it comes to the actual game, protagonist Sam is set on a journey by his estranged sister to try and set up communication links between these colonies so that the country will once more be united. It turns out, however, that the sister is actually a sort of godlike entity who must choose whether to allow humanity to continue its cycle of destruction and regrowth, or just initiate the last stranding and end all life on Earth. There is more to it than that, but we appreciate that you guys haven't got all day, so we'll have to just cut it there, I think. Number 5. BioShock Infinite. The plots of BioShocks 1 and 2 are complex enough, but when it comes to BioShock Infinite, oh boy, do things get insane. Our protagonist is Booker DeWitt, a man who must go to the airborne city of Columbia to find a young woman called Elizabeth in order to pay off a debt. Upon finding her, he discovers that Elizabeth has the ability to create tears between dimensions, and they end up in an alternate universe where DeWitt was a martyr to a terrorist cause. In order to preserve this version of reality, their leader tries to murder Booker, but is instead killed by Elizabeth. As the pair attempt to flee, Elizabeth is captured by the Songbird, a huge mechanical creature controlled by her adoptive father, Comstock, that guarded her prison before she was freed. It later transpires that Booker gave up his daughter Anna to Comstock, and she was raised under the name Elizabeth. That's right, Elizabeth has been Booker's daughter all along. But wait, there's more! Owing to the fact that this whole thing is based around multiverses, it turns out that Booker DeWitt himself is Comstock, just in a different timeline. There's also something about lighthouses and stuff, but I've given up at this point. I hope you all got that because I'm not repeating it. Number 4. The Metal Gear series. Here we've got a franchise that's decided to throw the idea of chronology out of the window and just release games in whatever gosh darned order it feels like. Obviously it makes sense for the third game in the series to be the first, the second to be the seventh, and the first to be the sixth. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? In terms of overall narrative, the events of the Metal Gear series take place in an alternate version of history in which the Cobra unit were instrumental in defeating the Axis powers during World War II. Following Hitler's defeat, the world was divided, and so began the Cold War. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater takes place first, chronologically, and sees Naked Snake sent into Russia to prevent GRU Colonel Volgin's attempt to overthrow the Soviet government, earning him the title Big Boss. He eventually becomes disillusioned with the American Special Forces, and ultimately becomes one of the series' antagonists. Big Boss is eventually offed by Solid Snake, his own genetic clone, in Metal Gear, and from there, the latter spends his days dealing with various villains, including the Patriots, a secretive cabal who have been steadily manipulating human history. I wish I could say that's it, but in truth, we've barely scratched the surface. Number 3. Dark Souls. The thing about Dark Souls is that when you take to the internet to try and decipher the plot, it's actually not that complicated. But if you try to pick it up from just the events of the game, well, best of luck, is all I can say. The main issue with trying to decipher the plot of Dark Souls from the game alone is that most of the narrative is fed to the player through interactions with NPCs, items of flavor text, and the world design itself, rather than through more traditional methods. Long before the events of the game, the world is dominated by dragons. However, when the first flame manifests itself, 4 beings are able to take immense power from the Lord Souls they find near it. 3 of them use said power to take control of the world, beginning the Age of Fire. Towards the end of the second Age of Fire, humans are cursed and rendered unable to die. Instead, they are perpetually resurrected, eventually driven mad. The player character is one such human, and he must acquire a bunch of MacGuffins in order to defeat the Lord Gwyn, then choose to preserve the Age of Fire, or allow the first flame to extinguish and bring about the Age of Dark. Honestly, neither choice is really any better than the other. Number 2. The Castlevania series. Here we have yet another example of a franchise where the plots of its individual games are fairly easy to get your head around, but the overarching storyline is a complete mystery to most. What we can figure out is that every 100 years or so, Dracula is resurrected and tries to take over the world, and it's up to the Belmont clan to try to stop him. Lament of Innocence, chronologically the first game in the series, establishes the origin of the conflict and how they came to be in possession of the vampire killer whip. The next time we visit the story in Dracula's Curse, almost 3 centuries have passed, and the Belmont clan have been driven from their home by those fearing their supernatural powers. From here, Dracula basically shows up every 100 years or so, and a different descendant of the Belmont clan is left with the task of fighting him. The main struggle with understanding the franchise's timelines is that the games have been released out of order, and some have even been retconned out of the canon. So if you're planning on embarking on a full Castlevania playthrough, we recommend consulting Wikipedia for the correct chronology. Otherwise, you will be completely lost. And number 1, the Kingdom Hearts series. Well, here it is, folks, the Mac Daddy of plots that give us all a migraine. One of the main reasons that the overarching narrative of Kingdom Hearts is so difficult to understand is that it spans over a dozen games on various platforms, and each and every one is canon. So if you haven't played all of the titles in the series, as I say, on different platforms, then it's likely you're going to be missing out on some vital piece of lore. We obviously don't have time to explain all the ins and outs of the series, but here's the very, very, very high-level overview of what's going on. A long time before the first game, there was just the one world, powered by an object called Kingdom Hearts, which is basically a source of light and life and lots of other nice stuff beginning with L. But naturally, we can't have nice things, and people began to fight over it using keyblades, thus beginning the Keyblade War. The world then fractured into a whole load of smaller pieces, and the forces of light and darkness became unbalanced. Enter Xehanort. I've not played Kingdom Hearts since the first one, leave me alone. Enter Xehanort, a Keyblade Master whose ultimate goal is to unlock Kingdom Hearts and reshape the world with light and darkness in perfect balance, whilst also restarting the Keyblade War in the process. From there, it's up to protagonist Sora and his Disney pals to stop the soul patch growing douche canoe in his tracks. Again, there is much more to it than that, so much that I feel sick every time I think about it, but there aren't enough hours in the day to go into it all. Just take it from me, Kingdom Hearts, despite its popularity and decent gameplay, is a bit of a convoluted mess, to be honest.